Okay, let's unpack this. We are diving deep today into something that, well, it touches pretty much everyone everywhere. Caregiving.
Hmm.
Raising kids, looking after older relatives, working in schools, hospitals. These roles are just absolutely essential.
Absolutely.
But if you picture a caregiver, maybe paid, maybe unpaid, who usually comes to mind, for most people, it's likely a woman, right?
On that intuition, well, it reflects the reality.
Yeah.
The data clearly shows caregiving roles, these occupations, are overwhelmingly filled by women. Men are significantly underrepresented, pretty much globally.
Yeah.
And this isn't just about, unpaid family care. It really impacts critical labor shortages. Think about nursing, teaching.
Right. So our mission in this deep dive, and we're pulling insights from research and analysis by experts here, is to really understand why. Why does this imbalance persist? What are these deep sociocultural barriers keeping men from engaging more in this whole care economy?
It's so important because, as the sources show, this isn't simply a matter of individual preference or choice.
Yeah.
There are really powerful societal forces at play.
Yeah.
Some quite surprising ones, actually, that affect all of us, our families, our communities, and even the availability of essential services.
So as we started digging into the research, several key barriers kind of emerged. And the first one that really stood out was just the power of cultural stereotypes. It's this widespread belief, isn't it, that men are just inherently less caring than women. But is there any real basis for that?
Well, that's what's fascinating. The research actually finds very little evidence for inherent gender differences in the ability to care.
Really?
Yeah, even infants, interestingly, show no sex difference in responding to helpfulness. Yet this explicit belief that women are more communal, more caring, it's incredibly common.
Wow.
Like in 2018, 3/4 of American adults surveyed believed this. And what's really striking is that this specific stereotype hasn't weakened over time like some others have.
It hasn't.
No, in fact, it seems to have actually gotten wider in recent decades, in places like the U.S. at least.
That is really counterintuitive. And these aren't just like abstract ideas floating around, are they? They actually shape how we judge people.
Totally. And they often influence our behavior automatically. It's like that subconscious link. Think, care, think, woman.
Right.
And this observation leads us to infer these inherent traits. Because we see more women doing the caring, people assume women must be naturally more caring, and so better suited for it.
So it kind of circles back to justify the way things already are. Like, nursing is mostly women, therefore it should be mostly women.
Exactly. It reinforces the status quo.
Okay, so building on that point about ability versus perception, the research suggests the next barrier might not be about capacity to care, but maybe more about motivation.
That seems right. While empathy is, a basic human tendency, some studies indicate men might be less likely to describe themselves as empathetic, or maybe less likely to show empathetic responses when gender is made really salient, when it's brought to their attention. And what's notable is that even small measured differences, say in tasks like reading emotions, can disappear entirely if you add external motivators, like payment.
So that suggests men might be less motivated to use those skills in certain situations rather than actually lacking them fundamentally.
Precisely. It points towards context and motivation, not just raw ability.
So where does that difference in motivation come from then? The research seems to point pretty strongly towards socialization, doesn't it?
Yes, very much so. This difference gets ingrained early on. Often, care is positioned as something kind of opposite to traditional masculinity. The sources show that even by age 6, boys tend to value being nice and kind less than girls do, and they start valuing winning and being the best more.
6 years old.
Right.
Yeah.
And these internalized values, they profoundly shape future aspirations, predicting whether someone prioritizes, say, career over family later on.
And masculinity is often framed as this precarious status, something easily lost.
Exactly. Lost by showing perceived weakness or, femininity. This pressure can really push boys and men away from care activities because engaging in them feels like a threat to their identity.
It's almost like boys are socialized to unlearn caring in a way.
That's one way to look at it. It creates a conflict with certain masculine norms.
And this isn't just personal feelings, right? Men, on average, tend to assign less societal worth to care jobs compared to women.
That's also true. There's another key factor identified, which is a bit of a paradox, really. It's about wealthy, individualistic societies.
Okay.
You'd think maybe higher gender equality overall would shrink the care gap, but often is actually larger in these countries.
Wait, why? That feels completely backwards.
Well, part of it is economic. Wealthier nations invest more in public health, education, boosting demand for care jobs. But those jobs, unfortunately, often pay less.
Right, the pay gap issue.
But sociocultural factors are also critical. Wealthier, more post-industrial countries have often shifted towards valuing individualism more and maybe collective harmony less.
Okay, so in these more individualistic cultures, care itself gets increasingly defined as a sort of feminine characteristic.
Precisely. Whereas in more collectivistic cultures, being caring might be less rigidly gendered, less tied just to women.
So this cultural shift reinforces the idea that care is women's work, making it even harder for men to see themselves thriving in those roles.
Exactly. And then finally, there's a barrier that often goes unmentioned. It's simply that men's underrepresentation in care work isn't widely seen as a problem that needs fixing.
Right. Society focuses heavily on barriers for women entering male-dominated fields, which is important, but
tends to overlook the constraints facing men who might want to enter female-dominated ones.
people just assume men aren't interested, maybe. Or they see the lower salaries and status in care roles as just a consequence of women being there, rather than maybe a cause or contributor to the imbalance itself.
Which further devalues the work itself. It's a cycle.
So what does all this mean for you, listening right now? Why should we care about these dynamics?
Well, firstly, it genuinely benefits men themselves. Research links having a care orientation to positive personal outcomes, better relationships, whereas some traditional masculinity norms are linked to less healthy behaviors.
That makes sense. And it directly addresses these huge labor shortages we mentioned in vital fields like nursing and teaching.
Absolutely. If half the potential workforce faces these deep-seated barriers, it's no wonder these essential sectors are struggling to find people.
Yeah, it's a massive pool of talent we're potentially sidelining.
Plus, increasing men's involvement in care, both at home and in paid work, it benefits women, helps advance broader gender equality, it allows women more freedom, and it has unique positive impacts on kids and family dynamics, too.
So understanding these barriers is really the first step towards maybe challenging them.
Definitely.
And remember, these dynamics, they shape the world you live in. They influence everything from your own family life to whether you can easily access good healthcare or education.
And maybe here's a final thought to leave you with. Given that some of these gendered beliefs about care seem to have actually gotten wider recently in places like the U.S., even while other gender gaps might be closing, what does that specific trend tell us about the challenge ahead? And how might understanding these deep-seated societal forces change how you think about care work, who does it, and maybe most importantly, how we value it?